In 2024, the number of individuals displaced from their homeland has increased drastically to 123.2 million, the highest number ever recorded, compared to 117.3 million in the previous year. And behind that figure are refugees, asylum seekers, and internally displaced people. Individuals forced to flee their homes because of war, violence, and persecution. Indeed, as the global displacement crisis intensifies, the issues in terms of human rights should be shed more light on. And the human rights we're talking about here is not solely about the right to safety, but also the right to educate, to work, to healthcare. These rights are being denied nowadays on a massive scale.
Yeah, just imagine waking up one day and suddenly, without any previous notification, boom, you are forced to leave your job, routines, and even families. Life is throughoutly turned upside down, and you can't blame anyone on it. And it's not just an imagination, it's a reality for millions of people, this day-to-day life for them. It's not a distant crisis, it's just global reality.
And still, the topic gets too far little attention. That's why we wanted to create this podcast, not to shock or shame anyone, but to help us understand. Hi everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of the REI podcast. My name is Queeny.
And I'm Pauline, and we are interns at Refugee Empowerment International, and we are so excited to have you here with us today. We've been working on this idea for a while, and now we're finally recording. So welcome to the REI podcast. This is where we'll explore how refugee empowerment really works and why it matters now more than ever.
The more we learn about the lives of displaced people, the more one thing became clear. This could happen to any of us, and that's something people often forget.
Yeah, imagine a conflict broke out in your city. If your family was targeted, what would you do? Maybe you'd run, grab essentials, maybe your phone and ID, and then leave. No plan, just survival. And suddenly, no longer you're a teacher or a student or a shop owner, you are a refugee. But you haven't changed, you're still you, just in a very different situation. That's the part that gets lost. Being displaced doesn't erase who someone is, it just forces them into a new reality. But unfortunately, many people see refugees only as numbers or problems. They aren't strangers, they're people we'd probably be friends with.
Exactly. They could be our classmates, our neighbors, and colleagues, if circumstances had been very different. And that's where we all come in, not just as speculators or donors, but as people who choose empathy, who choose to care. Because empathy is a decision. And once we understand that displacement could happen to any of us, it becomes personal. And that's really what the podcast is about. Not just fact, but connections. Not just problems, but responses, starting with awareness and leading to action.
So after talking about the scale of displacement and how easily it could affect any of us, we want to share where we are speaking from, and that's from inside REI.
Right. REI stands for Refugee Empowerment International. It's a certified non-profit based in Tokyo, and it's doing powerful work that not enough people know about.
It surprised us too. I mean, how can an organization with such global impact fly so under the radar? And what REI's executive director Jane always says that really sticks with us is that we offer a hand up, not a hand out.
Yes, because that one sentence changes the whole perspective. It's not about saving anyone. It's about walking alongside them, trusting their resilience and their leadership.
Over that time, REI has supported more than 500 projects across 50 more countries. From Kenya to Lebanon, Myanmar to the Thai-Myanmar border, the focus has always been on locally led solutions. It doesn't just provide aid and walk away. It supports community-driven projects that build long-term stability.
And when you see what REI achieves with a small team and a focused approach, it really proves how powerful that mindset is. We'll talk more about specific projects in a minute, but before that, we want to share Jane's voice. She's been at the heart of REI for more than 2 decades. We asked her to open this podcast, not just an executive director, but as someone who spent 20 more years working directly with communities on the ground. So here's Jane, in her own words, talking about her and her deep connection with REI, and it may offer you all more insights and understandings about this organization. the first question is, I feel like you have to respond a lot of things, but could you kind of talk about how REI was initiated by the first executive leader of it, and like what motivated her to found this organization, and like maybe like just like the timeline of it, if you can name the year of it.
Well, it started in 1979, and it came about because Sue Morton had been working and living and working in Thailand, and it was the time when the Cambodian Khmer Rouge was taking people out of their villages to work on the fields, and many of them were fleeing because there was quite a lot of abuse going on inside Cambodia, and so they were spilling over the borders into Thailand, and Sue Morton and other humanitarian volunteers there were working in the camps in Thailand, and they were advocating there for better conditions in the camps and for better services and opportunities for the refugees and provisions for them. Her husband, the reason she was in Thailand was because of her husband's job. He was transferred to Thailand, and to Japan. He was transferred to Japan, and so she got together with friends here, and her work was very much advocacy. So she and her friends, not Sue on her own, met up with visiting. It was a I don't know what the number was, G8, G10, whatever it was, meeting here in Japan at that time. And also a synod of bishops were meeting here. And they made representation to both those groups and for improved services and provisions to the camps in Thailand for Cambodian refugees. And that was how it started.
So initially she want to subsidize the organization to to help Cambodian.
It was supporting Cambodian refugees, and it was very much advocacy. Her work was very much advocacy and working to get better attention and better services to the camps in Thailand.
And how did she found you and reach out to you to ask you to join and participate in the organization?
Sue didn't reach out to me. I mean, Sue had long gone. Sue moved from Japan, a long time ago. I mean, shortly after that, I don't know what year, but she moved to Singapore, first of all, and then back to the States because she's American. And so the people she'd been working with here in Tokyo carried on the work of what was then, it was called Refugees International. And when Sue got back to the States, she got together with a couple of friends and slowly started up an office there for Refugees International, again doing advocacy. But I didn't join the group until 2000, so we're talking about 21 years later.
And when you first joined REI, were you here as an intern, or what kind of job did you do in REI?
I was a volunteer. I was probably a little bit old to be an intern when I joined. I knew a couple of people working with the group. It was called Refugees International Japan at that point. And I knew a few people who were in the group. I had been to some of the events that I'd seen them do, and I couldn't get involved in it because I was working full time. I had my own business, to put it that way, so therefore I was working every day of the week. And I closed down my business. I continued to work, but my time was more flexible, and so a friend asked me if I would join the group. And they wanted somebody to manage the choice of projects and where the money was, how the money was being used, how the projects were going, and reporting back on the projects and so on. And I thought that was really interesting. I didn't want to join for fundraising. And my background, having been a volunteer in Africa years back, and also doing a lot of work in other NGOs during the years, that side suited me very well because I had some good contacts overseas.
So, how do you think REI changed over years? Like,
it changed a lot. Through the early days and into the bubble economy in Japan, it was doing very well. It was doing very well because of organising society events, if you like. There was a lot of money around, and a lot of the people involved in it, their husbands were working for good companies and so on, so they could give money to these events. Then gradually, as the whole scene changed, not just in terms of amount of money available, but certainly, for example, CSR changed a lot of groups because companies started to look at where they were giving money and what that was going to, which is a good thing, so that it's worked out more carefully, and that people are asking questions. But that meant it was more difficult to raise funds for a particular cause if you weren't, if just because your husband or wife was part of the group. So that has changed a lot. In addition, registration, because for years and years, the organisation continued as a totally volunteer group without any registration and so on. And more as CSR and questioning and accountability became more of an issue, quite rightly. Therefore, the organisations needed to be registered. And a lot of the volunteers who'd worked quite hard on the fundraising and the events didn't want to, they were very nervous of the registration process, not because they were dishonest, but because of the amount of work it involves. So that was another big reason for the change. And accounting for everything takes up quite a bit of work and expertise. So the organisation changed for that reason. And then as time's gone on, there is less money flowing around. And so even some of the events that used to make a lot of money, they were losing that kind of attraction, if you like. And then, to be honest, as I went out to visit projects, I felt that it was important to choose a project that was going to have, or to choose projects which were going to have more of a long-term impact. And I could see some projects, not necessarily that REI had funded. In fact, I don't remember many of them being a waste. But I would see in many areas, I would see projects that had been set up without any consideration for what the local people wanted and how practical that was. And they were well-intentioned but unused. And so I began to question how we give funds, how we make a difference through the money we are providing. And I felt that the energy has to come from the people. And obviously, as I met more and more people and saw what they were doing rather than other people doing, I could see the huge benefits and I could see the results of what they were doing. So that is the other big change. I mean, less money flowing around, but also recognizing where to fund and how to fund has been the important change in REI.
Okay, so next one is what motivates you to stay in REI for such a long time, and how do you think the work is different compared to the time when you were a volunteer and compared to the time when you were actually the leader of this organization?
I've stayed because of the work that the refugees are doing in the project is amazing, and I'm totally inspired by them, and I just love what they do and see how they are building for themselves and working on, determined to make things better for their fellows. I mean, that's my inspiration. It's great. Got to know them, a lot of them, obviously, and seen huge changes and development in the project. So, and I meet lovely people like you. That is a part of it, though. You can smile at me, but I think one of the things that's great about my job is that we are providing opportunities, and we're providing opportunities through our funding into the project, providing opportunities for refugees, but we're equally providing opportunities for people like yourself, interns and volunteers, to do something beyond what would be a normal part of your life. So I love that, and I know I've had lots of opportunities myself, and it's great to share that with others. So that's the other side to why I continue. And it's changed a lot because I've got to carry the organisation. And so, changing from being a volunteer where I had to report back and do my bit of it, I didn't have to do all the other bits. So that's changed. Some of that is, it's tough. Fundraising is tough. I don't think I'm a brilliant fundraiser at all. So.
A lot of responsibility, I guess.
Yes.
Tough sometimes.
It has changed a great deal in the last 3-4 years in working with the team, because before that I was very much with volunteers who would be there from time to time, but now I'm working with a team, Yasko and Mariko, who are constant, and to have team decisions and so on. It's great. Love it.
Good. Do you have any call to action that you want to share with the audience? Like direct words that you're saying to the audience?
Well, I think, all the audience, everyone, I would like them to see that, number one, to think about where their contributions are going, whether it's to us or anyone. They should look at the results, how do they know what impact their donations are making? And I think this is really important. Everyone should be looking at that in a much more investigative way. And also to look at what is the most effective way to provide support, and recognise that it is much better to put the energy into the people who are a part of it. And that is where the energy is going to make the biggest difference. But we can't be telling people what to do by our standards when our way of life may be different to theirs, and recognising that.
Now that we've heard Jane's perspective and shared where REI comes from, let's talk about what drives this work. REI's vision is simple but powerful. A world where displaced people have the tools, opportunities, and dignity to rebuild their lives on their own terms.
And the last part, on their own terms, really stands out because it's not just about control, it's about agency.
Exactly. That's also reflected in the mission to fund community-led sustainable initiatives that empower refugees to regain control of their lives. And in practice, that starts with listening, not prescribing. It means trusting that communities know best what they need. It also means rebuilding partnerships based on respect, choosing local leaders carefully, and supporting solutions that actually work in context.
Something I found so thoughtful is that REI only funds projects that are time-bound. There's always an exit strategy, but the goal isn't dependency, it's ownership. And REI doesn't just look at short-term results, it follows up. It asks, is the initiative making a difference, even years later? That's why this mission works. It's both strategic and deep humanity.
We are about to walk you through the 5 projects REI is currently supporting, each of them grounded in the same values: dignity, sustainability, and local leadership.
Now that we understand REI's mission and vision, let's look at how it plays out in the real world. REI's approach is built on 4 core pillars, and each one shows what empowerment truly means in action. The first step to realize it is education. And education here doesn't just mean formal schooling, it means access to knowledge, skills, and the power to make informed choices. A great example is the kindergarten project in Lebanon. For many refugee children, they don't have a chance to interact with their peers and get proper preschool education, which are very crucial in their early life. This project gives refugee children a safe and nurturing places to learn and play, often for the first time in their lives doing this. And it's not just about early education, it's about restoring a sense of normalcy.
The second pillar is human and legal rights, because without legal identity, you can't access school, healthcare, or employment. Your future is purely blocked from the start. REI supports youth on the Thai-Myanmar border throughout human rights education. These young people often don't have birth certificates or legal protections, but once they know their rights, they begin to claim space and possibilities for themselves.
Then comes the third pillar, job creation, because dignity often starts with the ability to earn your own living. Take the startup training in Nairobi for an example. Refugees are taught how to launch and manage small businesses, budgeting, marketing, building a client base. Some even bounce back from COVID disruptions to start again. And the best part is that many graduates go on to mentor others or hire within their own communities. That's real empowerment, when success spreads outward.
And the final pillar is community and environment building. This one focuses on emotional well-being, safety, and long-term resilience. Pregnant women in current state Myanmar lack basic maternity knowledge and hygienic environment, or even some daily necessities like nail clippers. This causes extremely high maternal and fetal mortality rate, and one of REI-funded projects, Maternal Health and Baby Kit program in Myanmar, reaches mothers in remote areas, sometimes through unsafe terrain, to deliver essential care. That's not just health support, it's a message: you are not forgotten.
There's also the addiction rehabilitation project along the Thai-Myanmar border. Displacement often leads to trauma, and this program helps people heal, recover, and reconnect. Many even become peer mentors afterward.
When you map out REI's 5 projects in Myanmar, Lebanon, Kenya, and along the Thai-Myanmar border, you'll see that each one is rooted in at least one of these pillars. Often they overlap, and that's the strength of REI's model. These aren't isolated interventions. Education supports rights, the rights open up jobs, and the jobs build community. It's all connected. Because REI isn't just responding to crisis, it's laying foundations, and it's long-term, it's intentional and deeply personal.
And that's what makes this approach so effective. It's not top-down. It's not about dependency. It's about partnership and trust.
One thing we really appreciate about REI is that the work doesn't end with funding. There's always a relationship, a commitment to staying connected.
Exactly. REI regularly conducts field visits to every active project. These aren't just formal inspections. They're about listening, learning, and making sure the support aligns with real community needs.
For example, in 2024, the team visited Nairobi and the Thai-Myanmar border. They spoke directly with project leaders and participants, from women rebuilding their businesses to people in addiction recovery programs.
What stood out in those visits wasn't just progress, but resilience. People rebuilding their lives in some of the toughest conditions, and doing it with dignity and strength. And that direct field contact is essential. It keeps the real world real, and it ensures that every donor contribution is being used effectively and transparently.
Because at REI, accountability is part of empowerment too. It's about showing up, staying engaged, and sharing responsibility. There's something Jane, REI's executive director, said early on that really sticks with us. Before there were refugees, there were just people with dreams, families, fears, and talents. And that one sentence really says it all. Once someone is labeled a refugee, the world often forgets who they were before. But crossing a border doesn't erase your identity.
Exactly. You're still you, like we mentioned before, even if everything around you changed. That's why dignity isn't just a nice extra, it's the starting point. And if we try to help without recognizing people's dignity, we risk turning support into control. And that's not what REI is about.
We see this in so many stories from the field, like the woman in Nairobi who went through REI's business training and reopened her salon. She didn't just receive funding, she regained her confidence. Or the child in Lebanon who learned to write their name for the first time in an REI-supported kindergarten. That's more than a skill, it's a moment of pride, a reminder that they matter. And it's those small moments that show what dignity really looks like. Not in slogans, but in everyday life.
That's why REI always centers the individual, not just the problem. Because if we reduce people to their suffering, we're not truly helping. True empowerment sees the whole person, their pain, yes, but also their strengths, their voices, and their potentials.
And honestly, that's what we hope this podcast reminds people of, that refugees aren't defined by what happened to them. They're students, parents, artists, workers, just like us. Dignity is the bridge between us and them. Once you will see it, the line disappears.
So far, we've talked a lot about what REI does on the ground, but there's another side to this work, the community REI builds around.
Yes, and one of the ways that happens is through events. These aren't just about fundraising, they're about bringing people together into the same mission in a meaningful way. Take the gala evening at Conrad Tokyo as an example. In 2025, it was called Reimagine the Future and raised over 7 million yen for REI's projects.
But it's not just a fancy dinner, it's a full experience, with project videos, first-hand stories, and both live and silent auctions. The next gala is already scheduled for April 17th, 2026, so feel excited and stay tuned. And what's really special about the gala is the atmosphere. It's elegant, but also deeply reflective. You sit there and realize this is what collective impact looks like.
Then there are more casual gatherings like the Great Wine Bluff Nights. These are more intimate, fun evenings where guests try to guess which wine description is real, and they connect over laughter and learning. They are lighthearted, but they open space for meaningful conversations. So you meet the REI team, hear updates, and you leave with a sense of belonging.
Yeah, and our team really tries to make these events really fun and enjoyable, and well, being very reflective that everyone can learn something from it. And whether it's a gala or a small group discussion, every event is about connection. And that's what makes it so powerful. They turn empathy into action. They make support feel personal, and they invite everyone, whether you're donating, volunteering, or just showing up, to be part of something large.
And that's what REI does so well. It doesn't just tell stories, it builds a community around them. Okay, so before we wrap up, here's a little sneak peek into what's coming next.
Okay, so for our next episode, we're talking about some of the friends of REI to celebrate World Friendship Day. And these friends including people who support this mission, not just with donations, but with real hearts, times, and commitments.
You'll hear from long-term volunteers, corporate partners, and even a few familiar faces who've been moved by REI's work in powerful ways. They'll share what drew them to REI, how their views on displacement have changed, and why dignity has become a core value in their own lives too. It's going to be honest, inspiring, and maybe even a bit surprising.
So stay tuned and get ready to meet these people standing behind REI's vision.
If this first episode moved you even just a little, we'd love for you to visit our website. There you'll find more about our work, our projects, and how you can get involved. And you can also follow us on Instagram. All the contact information will be in the podcast description. And yeah, even just liking, sharing, or commenting helps spread the message.
Exactly, because empowerment starts with awareness. And by listening today, you've already taken that first step. And in addition to that, we'd love to know how you feel after listening to our podcast. So the question is, were most of the mentioned information in this podcast new to you, or did you already know that? Please let us know and vote down below, or maybe just comment a sentence or two.
Thank you for being here, for giving your time and your attention to the stories that matter.
We can't wait to keep this conversation going. Until then, stay curious, stay kind, and keep showing up.
See you next time.